Doctor's breach of privacy ignites family crisis. Ita for wanting to report my doctor, who also happens to be my sister's lifelong best friend, for telling her I'm on Vyvanse, a total HIPAA violation. My oldest sister's lifelong best friend has been my doctor for a couple of years. Initially, my doctor, Dr. A, was a colleague of hers from the same clinic, but after my doctor, Dr. A, was away on maternity leave, I temporarily switched to my sister's friend, Dr. B, as my primary physician, and it's been that way since the pandemic began, and I never switched back. I have ADHD and get prescription meds for it, and have been for a few years now, something I haven't shared with any of my family members for fear of backlash, since I come from a long line of type A overachievers who don't believe in ADHD and write it off as laziness. A few days ago, my siblings and I were hanging out at my sister's house watching the Matthew Perry, Diane Sawyer episode where he shares his history with Substance About, and I made a comment about how skinny he looked during one of the seasons of Friends. My sister then, out of nowhere, says to me, "Well, it started with prescription drugs, so I hope you don't get hooked." I was instantly gripped with a feeling of absolute horror. My other siblings were confused and looking at her for further clarification, but she didn't say anything more. I spent the whole night just frozen and with a deep pit in my stomach. Later, when I found some time alone with her, I had to pry the information out of her. She had just gotten back from a girls' ski trip, and when they were extremely drunk, her friend, my Dr. B, slipped up and mentioned that she saw me recently for an increase in my dosage and basically revealed to my sister that I have been taking prescription Vyvanse for a few years now. I'm so livid, feel utter betrayal, and have a strong urge to report her for breaking HIPAA regulations. My sister won't stop texting and calling me about it, literally all day long, begging me not to ruin her friend's life forever after years of hard work. She's obviously worried about losing her friend, but she couldn't care less about how disrespected I feel and how my privacy was violated. And more than anything, I worry that my sister will share it with my parents, and my family will never look at me or my achievements the same. ETA. A little more info. I've known Dr. B my entire life, as long as my sister has. She was my sister's friend since they were in first grade, and they've remained close, and we've hung out with our families on multiple occasions over the years. We've even gone on trips together, including my sister's bachelorette. I always looked up to her and found her cool growing up. She and my sister both have kids around the same age, and they're close as well. She currently brings in the bigger chunk of the income in their family, and they rely on it, and my sister keeps reminding me that I'm also ruining 2 innocent children's lives in the process, which is the only thing I feel guilt about. I adore those kids, and they don't deserve that. But I also cannot get over how betrayed I feel. I always keep a safe distance between personal and professional relationships, and would have never picked her to be my doctor had the circumstances not unfolded the way it did. She was the next best doctor and was the obvious choice because I wasn't really looking to switch to a new clinic during the pandemic. Update, I reached out to a close lawyer friend for advice as well, and he, like most of you, agreed that I should report it and to do it without informing anyone else. He said it was better for me to do it sooner to have it on record. They prefer any complaint to be filed within 180 days of when you knew that the act or omission complained of occurred. 2 days after that, I reported Dr. B to OCR for violating HIPAA and Patient Safety Act and breaching my fundamental right to health information privacy. I didn't tell my sister or anyone else, but a few days later, I saw my entire family when I went home for the holidays. I hadn't heard anything back yet on my complaint, so I wasn't sure if Dr. B was aware yet, let alone tell my sister that I had reported her so I didn't say a word. Turns out that wasn't my biggest issue at that moment, though. My sister had already told my parents that I was on an extremely high dose of controlled substances. I knew my parents wouldn't take this news well, but they were far more upset about it than I could have imagined. My dad doesn't believe in ADHD and thinks it's merely an excuse for those that allow themselves to get easily distracted, especially since the age of social media. He even remarked that he noticed I was quite slow with my responses since dropping out of my chess club. Really absurd and offensive comments. I can't even remember a lot of it because I was frozen. I just sat there, nauseous and livid, with tears in my eyes, just listening to the 3 of them, my parents and sister, take turns going off at me. My mom wanted me to stop all medications immediately, that I'm better than this and smarter than this, and even threatened to Tell your professors that you're on drugs if you leave us with no choice." But when she said that, it hit me. I had a choice. I could choose. I could choose to never have to deal with this again, and to not let them treat me this way anymore. So I did. I chose to say nothing, and allowed them to interpret my silence as agreeing and submitting to their ways, as I have done so many times before. And then I went to my room, chose to book a flight, and pack up most of my stuff. My books would need buses of their own to be transported anywhere. The next morning, I chose to call an Uber a few hours before my flight, while they were still asleep, and flew back to my university. I chose me. In January, I found out that Dr. B had prior complaints from patients against her, and my report had opened an investigation that is currently ongoing. She's been placed on temporary leave till the case is resolved. Update 2. My ADHD and current anxiety has me extremely overwhelmed, so please excuse me for not being able to respond to each of you individually. I get quite a few questions every day about any update with the case. I'm not sure how so many of you are still finding this post, but I really appreciate everything you've said to me to help me get through this. I'm sorry I can't answer any questions right now. Please know that once I have enough to share, or any real information, I most certainly will, but for now, there isn't much. The only thing I can share is that I am currently working with an attorney well-versed in HIPAA A violations, who is handling the matter on my behalf. We have received a notice regarding the outcome of the investigation from the OCR, which I am not allowed to share yet. I'm not sure if we, along with the other patients who faced breach of privacy from the same doctor, will be suing because that's usually the most unlikely outcome, since it almost always falls on the employers rather than the doctors, I've been told. We might proceed with a civil claim. There's a lot of bureaucracy involved, and it seems quite complicated, so I don't have a timeline on what to expect yet. I'm just grateful to have a lawyer that knows what they're doing